The Airbnb Stalker. The invitation. Do you ever wonder about the places we visit? The ones we think are safe, the places that look like they've been built just for us, inviting us in, offering us comfort for the night? Perhaps it's something we all overlook, something we never even think to question. What if the walls you trust to keep you safe are actually waiting for you to trust them? What if they're already watching you, listening, waiting for the right moment to make you theirs? This is where it begins, where you begin. It was supposed to be an ordinary getaway, a break from the world, a brief escape from the daily grind. Just a couple of friends booking an Airbnb on a whim, something far from the noise and chaos of city life. They were excited, they were naive. Let me introduce you to the couple, Jenna and Kyle. They found a quaint little cottage tucked away in the hills, miles from civilization, perfect for their weekend escape. The listing was charming. Pictures of a warm, rustic living room with thick wooden beams, soft lighting that promised comfort, and a view of the forest stretching out behind it. The price was cheap, the reviews glowing. Too good to be true? Of course it was. The drive was long, and as the sun sank lower behind the trees, Jenna couldn't shake an odd feeling in the pit of her stomach. Kyle, ever the optimist, dismissed it. It's just a cabin in the woods. Don't overthink it, he teased, glancing at her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. By the time they arrived, the day had slipped into dusk. The wind howled through the trees, and the air was thick with the smell of pine and damp earth. Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that the forest around them was too still. But Kyle was already hauling their bags toward the door, oblivious to her unease. They unlocked the door, stepping into the dimly lit entryway. It was smaller than they expected, but cozy. And there, sitting in the corner of the living room, was a dusty old chair. It seemed almost out of place. Everything else in the room looked new, clean, pristine, but the chair had an air of age to it. Faded velvet, the wood scratched and worn. Ugh, it looks like something out of a horror movie, Kyle joked, moving to sit in it, but Jenna grabbed his arm. No, let's just go upstairs and unpack. Kyle, unbothered, shrugged and followed her up. The upstairs was quiet, too quiet, and the air felt heavier with every step they took. As they unpacked, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching them. She couldn't explain it. It was just a sensation, a shiver up her spine that seemed to follow her movements, like a gaze she could feel but not see. When they finally settled in, Kyle was already scrolling through his phone, blissfully unaware of her growing anxiety. Jenna tried to distract herself, flipping through a book she'd brought along, but the silence around her was suffocating. It was too quiet. At midnight, the unease peaked. Jenna woke with a start, her heart pounding as if someone had whispered her name just beyond the door. She blinked, eyes wide, listening. It was silent. Too silent. She sat up, her breath shallow, and turned toward Kyle, who lay next to her, sound asleep. The faint moonlight from the window bathed the room in a cold glow. That's when she noticed something. The chair. The chair in the living room. It was closer. It had been moved. It was now positioned directly in front of the stairs, facing the hallway. Her throat tightened and she shook Kyle awake. Kyle, wake up. He groggily rubbed his eyes. What's wrong? The chair, she whispered, pointing toward the open door. Her voice shook as she spoke. It moved. Kyle sat up, squinting into the darkness. He chuckled, but it was forced. Jenna, it's just a chair. You're freaking out. You were probably half dreaming. Jenna wasn't sure what to think. She wanted to believe him, but her gut told her something was wrong. She knew, deep in her bones, that the chair hadn't been there before. She glanced over her shoulder toward the dark hallway and noticed that something else had changed too. The door to the bathroom, usually closed, was now slightly ajar, a crack of shadow visible through the gap. Someone's in the house, she murmured, panic rising in her chest. Kyle stood, stretching. You're scaring yourself. It's probably just the wind or the house settling. But as he moved toward the door, Jenna grabbed his arm. Don't open it. Kyle looked at her, his face contorted with annoyance and confusion, but before he could respond, a soft, dry whisper filled the air, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Leave now. Jenna's blood ran cold. She wanted to scream, but her throat had gone dry. The air in the room felt thicker now, suffocating. The shadows in the hallway seemed to deepen, twist, and writhe like living things closing in. The whisper came again, louder this time. Leave, before it's too late. Kyle turned toward her, his face pale. What the hell? I didn't hear anything. But Jenna had heard it. She had heard it all too clearly. And now she couldn't unhear it. Her chest tightened as the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. slow, deliberate, like something, was waiting, watching. In that moment, Jenna knew they were not alone. This wasn't just a bad Airbnb. This wasn't just a house in the woods. This was something far worse. The nightmare had begun. The watching presence. Jenna's breath came in shallow gasps, her eyes wide with terror as the footsteps grew louder, drawing closer. The door to the hallway creaked open, the shadows beyond thick and impenetrable, as if the darkness itself were alive, pulsing, waiting. Kyle stood frozen, his mouth hanging open as he looked between Jenna and the door, trying to comprehend what was happening. "Jenna? I don't hear anything." His voice cracked, but there was a growing unease in his tone now, something he couldn't hide. The whisper came again, closer this time, right at the edge of her ear. "Turn around, it's already behind you." Her entire body went rigid. The whisper didn't just linger, it pressed against her mind like a heavy, suffocating force. A cold, clammy hand seemed to wrap around her chest, squeezing tighter with each passing second. She turned her head slowly, her eyes darting to the shadows that now stretched unnaturally across the walls of the room. She could see them, shapes, faint but unmistakable, shifting in the darkness. The figures were there, watching. "Jenna, this isn't real," Kyle whispered, his voice trembling. He took a tentative step toward the open door, but Jenna grabbed his wrist, pulling him back. The icy chill of his skin sent a shockwave through her. "I'm telling you, it's not just the house." Jenna's voice was barely a whisper, strangled with fear. "There's something here. Something that was waiting for us." Kyle's expression shifted then, from confusion to something darker. His gaze dropped to the floor, where a trail of dust, fine and almost invisible, led toward the far corner of the room. There, tucked in the shadow of the wall, was the chair. The chair that hadn't been there before. And there, seated in it, was the unmistakable outline of a figure, its features obscured but the shape, it was watching them. A soundless scream caught in Jenna's throat as she realized the truth. The figure was not human. It was something far older, far more sinister. Its presence pressed into the room, distorting everything, warping the very air they breathed. And it had been watching them since the moment they entered the house. "Leave." The whisper came again, but now it sounded more like a command, a deep growl from the thing that hid in the shadows. It wasn't a voice, it was the very essence of malevolence, crawling beneath her skin, sinking into her bones. Kyle, shaken to his core, took a trembling step back. This isn't normal." His voice cracked, and his eyes widened in horror as the figure in the chair began to stir. Jenna tried to scream, but her voice was stolen by the pressure building in the room, like 1,000 unseen eyes bearing down on them. The air was thick, impossibly thick. She felt her lungs tightening as if the room itself were swallowing her whole. And then it moved. The figure in the chair stood slowly, deliberately, its movements jerky and unnatural, like something that hadn't moved in centuries. The darkness around it seemed to twist and writhe, undulating as if the shadows themselves were alive, feeding off its presence. The figure was tall, taller than any human should be. Its body was obscured in a cloak of darkness, an absence of light that made it hard to look at directly. But the eyes were what Jenna couldn't escape. Two black pits, glowing faintly like dying embers, locked onto her. It saw her. It knew her. Jenna's body froze, her limbs heavy as if she were encased in ice. Kyle was no better, rooted to the spot, his face pale and gaunt as he stared into the abyss of the figure's gaze. The air around them began to crackle, the silence so thick it was suffocating. Then suddenly a voice, a real voice, echoed inside Jenna's skull. It wasn't speaking in words, but she understood it all the same. "You shouldn't have come here." The weight of the words crushed her chest, pushing the air from her lungs. She stumbled backward, her legs failing her, and she collapsed to the floor. Kyle fell beside her, trembling violently. His eyes were wild, his breath erratic as he scrambled to get up, but the shadows around them seemed to grow, pulling him down, holding him. It was then that she saw it. In the corner of the room, where the darkness had once been still, now something moved, a figure. The previous tenant. The one who had stayed before them. The one who had never left. His face was pale, eyes hollow, his body emaciated, but his mouth twisted into a smile that was so wide it seemed to tear his face apart. His body flickered in and out of reality as if he were both there and not there at once. But there was one thing that was undeniably real. He was watching them. Jenna screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence. The figure in the chair had approached, its long, unnaturally thin fingers reaching for her. She tried to move, tried to run, but it was like her body was trapped in a vice. Her muscles refused to obey, her legs unable to lift her from the cold, unforgiving floor. And then the whispers returned. You should have never stayed. The last thing Jenna saw before everything went black was the figure leaning over her, its face inches from hers, the eyes burning with an ancient, unspeakable hunger. The last thing she felt was the cold breath of something far older than time, wrapping around her throat, pulling her into the darkness. And now, as you sit here reading these words, you may feel the chill in the air. You may feel the whisper just beyond your ear, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on you. This story has now become a part of you. And as you question whether you truly are alone in your own room, remember this. The thing in the chair is always watching. You were never meant to hear this. Do you dare to subscribe? Do you dare to welcome it in? It's already too late.